Okay, last slide, rationalizing the denominator. Now, there was a rule that we discussed in lesson 11.1. Radicals are not allowed in the denominator of a fraction. You cannot have a radical in the denominator. That is a rule in math. So you must simplify it. Okay, but in one like this, the square root of 3 does not simplify. There's nothing that we could simplify the number 3 into. Okay, so here's the move. Here's the technique. It's called rationalizing. All right? What you do is you multiply this fraction by whatever's in the bottom. So we're going to multiply by square root of 3 over square root of 3. Okay, and you'll see why we do this in a second. So just multiply the numerator and the denominator by the square root of 3. So the numerator becomes 5 times the square root of 3, which you just write like that, 5 root 3. You don't multiply the 5 and the 3 there because the 5 is a regular 5, but the 3 is under a radical. You don't multiply them. You just write them next to each other. Okay? Think of the radical terms as like a variable. Like call this like an x. Suppose that were an x, and you tried to multiply 5 times x. You would just write it as 5x, right? 5x. So same thing. A radical is like an x term. So you just write it as 5 root 3. However, in the bottom, root 3 times root 3, you could multiply those, as we did in the slide above. You just multiply the numbers, and you put them both under the radical. That becomes square root of 9. Now, the good news is, whenever you do this technique, the bottom number will always be a perfect square. So square root of 9, we know what that is. It's just the number 3. So this fraction, the 5 root 3 in the top, remains, and then the square root of 9 in the bottom becomes a 3. And that's it. Now there's no more radical in the bottom. Okay, so this is technically a simplified version of the original problem. You're not allowed to have radicals in the bottom. See here, we have a radical in the bottom. Here we don't. There's no more radical in the bottom. Let's do the same thing here. 21 over root 7. So we're going to multiply by square root of 7 over square root of 7. So the top, you just write them next to each other. 21 square root of 7. The bottom becomes square root of 49, which we know the square root of 49 is just the number 7. So it's 21 radical 7 over 7. And now the last step is, sometimes you could simplify this further, like 21 divided by 7. Those are just regular old numbers now. There's no radicals under the 21 and the 7 have no radicals. So you could just divide them. 21 divided by 7 is just 3. And then this radical 7 just gets written right next to the 3 in your answer. Like that, 3 root 7. All right, let's do one more together. So 10 over root 5. So we multiply by root 5 over root 5. This becomes 10 root 5 over the square root of 25. Square root of 25, as we know, is 5. So the 10 root 5 in the top over just a 5 in the bottom. And then we could simplify 10 divided by 5, which is really just 2. And the radical 5 remains as part of our answer, 2 radical 5. You guys try for homework this problem, and then these 6 down here. And that's it. That's the whole file. Good luck.